New developments in the Supreme Court fight. Brett Kavanaugh's sexual assault accuser prepared to testify next week. Here is the news. The lawyer for Dr. Christine Blasey Ford saying she would, quote, be prepared to testify next week as long as the senators offer terms that are, quote, fair and that ensure her safety. Ford's attorney adds that a hearing on Monday is not possible, but the strong preference is still for an investigation before any testimony would be offered. Meanwhile, the chairman of the committee, Chuck Grassley, rejecting any call for the FBI to get involved, but consider that he said this during the Clarence Thomas hearings.
Now, when the chairman of the Judiciary Committee and when the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee learned of these allegations, the FBI was immediately ordered to conduct an investigation. That investigation was completed before the Senate Judiciary Committee voted on Friday, September the 27th, 1991.
The criticism of Grassley comes from, well, historical Grassley. Meanwhile, as for Judge Kavanaugh, he was back at the White House third day in a row preparing for whatever comes next. He was getting grilled by a small group of staff about his past, his dating life, and the account this accuser has given. The accuser, of course, Dr. Ford, is out with her own strategies. She is reportedly being advised by Ricky Seidman, a Democratic operative who helped with Anita Hill's preparations against Clarence Thomas, which she talked about in those hearings in '91.
On September 6th, Ricky Seidman called me. She again asked me about rumors, whether I knew anything about his actually engaging in sexually harassing acts. I told Ms. Seidman that I would neither confirm nor deny.
White House pressing forward, but congressional Republicans worried about the risk here. Anti-Kavanaugh protesters were swarming the Hill today, including 56 arrests. That's the pressure on the ground. I'm joined now by attorney Nancy Erika Smith, who has experience in these matters, including representing Gretchen Carlson in a sexual harassment lawsuit against Fox News CEO Roger Ailes that proved quite impactful, and Jess McIntosh, executive editor of Share Blue Media. Nancy, I begin with you because I'd like you to walk us through what the legal strategy is on the Ford side. What are they hoping to get out of this latest salvo?
Well, I think that they're trying to avoid Dr. Ford not being able to speak at all and having sort of a kangaroo court where Kavanaugh gets in front of the nation and in a very rehearsed way in front of a very friendly, and some of the same exact people who grilled Anita Hill, amazingly, same men who grilled Anita Hill. I think that they're trying to avoid that kind of circus atmosphere where she's completely disregarded. On the other hand, it's dangerous because we have such resources on the other side. On the other side, we have the White House, giant law firms with private investigators. In a normal case, if you slip in a supermarket, you get discovery. You share information. There are investigations. If you have a car accident, if you're charged with a misdemeanor, there's a process in our court system that allows you to share information. The Republicans are making sure that process does not happen for Dr. Ford.
Well, let's dig into your point there, because what you're talking about is procedural due process, which is something that most people, luckily, hopefully, don't have to think about that much, but is a prerequisite for any fair fact-finding, which lawyers spend a lot of time on. And if anybody knows about that, to your point, it's the Judiciary Committee. We showed Grassley contradicting himself over the historical timeline. Here is Senator Hatch as well, Nancy.
Chairman Biden and the ranking member Thurman, when they heard about this the first time, they immediately ordered this FBI investigation, which was a very right thing to do. It's an appropriate thing to do. They did what every other chairman and ranking member have done in the past. And the investigation was done, and it was a good investigation.
So, Nancy, I don't want to lead a witness or a panelist. You are a far more experienced lawyer than I am. But I would ask you, does the historical record suggest that those senators, at least Grassley and Hatch, are knowingly trying to deny Dr. Ford her procedural due process?
They certainly are. They're trying to rush. Why? What's the rush? The Republicans didn't let President Obama fill a seat on the United States Supreme Court for a year. Kennedy left less than 2 months ago. Why the rush? Why not let the FBI do the investigation? It's a crime to lie to the FBI, and it's very telling that Dr. Ford is saying, please let me participate in an investigation, and Mr. Kavanaugh is saying, no FBI. The Republicans absolutely don't want it. Also telling is that they're allowing Mr. Judge, who Dr. Ford said was actually a participant in the assault, they're allowing him to say, I don't want to testify. And as we know from Anita Hill, she had corroborating witnesses who were not allowed to testify. Has anything changed since 1991? Except that now we don't even pretend to have due process for the accuser.
Jess.
Yeah, I mean, it's stunningly intellectually dishonest, and this is why women are so angry. It is so very obvious that this has there is no principle at work here. It is simply about silencing women and making sure that these men, regardless of how they treated us, are able to ascend to the very highest rungs of power. When this happens, you hear all the time, due process, due process, due process. Now we are in a place where the accuser is asking for due process, and these men, despite their own protestations previously, are trying to say that they don't need to require it. We used to have laws in this country, laws that were designed to make it very difficult for women to claim rape credibly, that required a witness, a third party, to have witnessed the sexual assault. That's how rare it is to have a witness in these things. We actually have one now, and he's not going to testify.
Well, and to your point, Jess, in cases of false accusation, whether they involve a false accusation of any type of crime, the general view is that time helps the falsely accused if they are falsely accused, because over time things can then come out.
Of course,
it would be highly unusual for the person who is claiming that they are falsely accused, that what they need is a rush to judgment before things are examined, because that's when something else might step in. And with that point, I want to turn to the other part of this, which is obviously the politics, Jess. Take a look at the new poll. This is out tonight, Wall Street Journal, NBC, and you're seeing the shift, basically opposition rising against Kavanaugh. Is that also part of the Republican rush?
Yeah, I mean, the opposition is rising. Even, I mean, women are done. The opposition is rising among independent men. Like, Republicans need to understand that they will face a massive political backlash if they continue to support this person. You don't get to those numbers with just Democrats. Republican women, the 53% of white women that voted for Trump that we now know are peeling off in droves, the college-educated white women, the suburban white women, they're the ones who are opposing Kavanaugh. If these red state senators just push this guy through and put another accused sexual predator on the Supreme Court, they're going to feel it in November and for a long time. We're not talking about a court of law here. We're talking about a very high bar. Somebody who serves as a Supreme Court justice has to have the absolute highest level of integrity. They literally rule on civil rights for the country. There is no higher bar here. So the idea that we would be okay with an accused attempted rapist sitting there being the swing vote for women's reproductive freedom is just not going to fly.
Right, and you think about that in the context of this president, and you wonder what women who've accused him of misconduct think. What I'm going to do, Nancy and Jess, is thank you for your time. When we're back in 30 seconds, we're going to hear from a woman who accused Donald Trump of misconduct and who is now running for office on the ballot in November when we're back in 30.